Very good afternoon to you, Robin. Looking at that export trend, like you say in your report, it has been quite stagnant, really lacking a drive, and that we've seen in the budget deficits that the country has been running.
Well, I think for a small economy like Namibia's, our export performance is absolutely critical. As you said, just quoting the introduction of the report, if we're not exporting more goods and services to the rest of the world, then we're not growing fast. So what we've done in this paper is just to look at the last 10 years worth of export data, looking at trade data and looking at exports within the national accounts as a component of gross domestic product. We've just examined how that's changed over the past 10 or so years. And the basic story is not an awful lot has changed.
Indeed, if you look at the report, it also spoke about diversification, which has also been quite stagnant in terms of the product ranges as well as the destinations that Namibia is targeting.
That's right. I mean, in the paper we talk about diversification of goods and services, the kind of products we're offering the rest of the world, and also the diversification of export markets. In terms of what we're exporting, there have been some changes. We're exporting new products now that we didn't export 10 years ago, such as special high-grade zinc and cut and polished diamonds. But if you go outside those two areas, there's actually very little that we're exporting now that we didn't export 10 years ago, and that's of concern. We need to be producing more product lines, and that's not happening. In terms of export markets, that's actually quite similar, although there's some sign that we're diversifying away from a few very important export markets. We're still very, very dependent on those markets after the last 10 years. So, if you look at our top 10 markets, they account for much more than 75% of all our exports, and the remaining markets account for a very, very small proportion. Europe, North America, China is still reasonably important, but no great changes there over the last 10 years. And if you look at our export performance into the rest of Africa, if you look away from South Africa and Angola, which have traditionally been very big export markets for us, we're still exporting absolutely minuscule amounts of goods, merchandise goods, to the rest of Africa.
What role do you think foreign direct investment into Namibia plays in the overall picture?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, FDI since independence in 1990 has been absolutely critical to achieving the positive rates of growth Namibia has generally achieved over the last 21 years or so. We've been quite successful at attracting that foreign direct investment, but I think we need to be more successful. We need to be more aggressive. It's not I think a lot of the time policymakers here see it as an either-or situation. Either you favour foreign direct investors or you favour local investors. But I think there's definitely a lot of synergy between the two. By attracting more successful and serious foreign direct investors, you'll actually energise the local business community at the same time. So I think we need to bear that in mind. It must remain an absolutely key component of our exports and our drive for higher rates of growth.
And like you say, we have seen high rates of growth coming through from Namibia, but the government has been the major driver behind all of that. Do you think it will be sustained? It is sustainable at this stage?
Yeah. Look, over the last few years, since basically the world financial and economic crisis blew in sort of 2008 and in the years following that, government has stepped in very aggressively, I would say. Interest rates are at rock bottom levels and government spending has been high. Luckily, we came out of that crisis with historically very low levels of public debt, so government could borrow and spend. But there's a limit to how long that can continue, and at the end of the day, we need to create a vibrant, export-oriented private sector that motors the economy along. We can't rely on low interest rates and heavy government spending, one decade after the next.
It's all about economic growth now, and what levels are you seeing growth in Namibia reaching in 2012?
Yeah, look, we've got a pretty good record since the very small contraction we suffered in 2009. Growth has been positive. The economy bounced back quite strongly in 2010 thanks to government spending and low interest rates. It then fell a little bit, but it's still positive, and I see growth in the region of between 4 and 5% a year for this year and the few years going forward. There are some potentially very large things that could happen to the Namibian economy in the next few years, such as a huge new uranium mine that's being developed, such as the discovery of offshore commercially viable deposits of oil, and these would have huge catalytic impacts on the economy. But as yet, these things either haven't been built or oil hasn't been discovered yet. So we have to wait and see the results of the offshore drilling program. But that could raise growth rates way above the 4 to 5% level that we're seeing at the moment.
Robin, thank you so much for joining us. Robin Sherbourne, research analyst at IJG Securities.